A big shocking Tulsi Gabbard claim is making the news lately in an attempt, we can only assume, to distract from the renewed attention that the Epstein files are getting. Trump is feeling the heat, so he's apparently told his director of national intelligence to investigate the claim that President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower before Trump took office. Also, that Obama committed treason and tried to change the results of the 2016 election. The office of President Obama came out with a statement pretty immediately about this one, saying basically that they really hate to weigh in on all the, quote, constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House. Look, he's guilty. It's not a question, Trump tells us. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. Sorry, I know I can't do Trump. It just actually makes me ill to even try. So who's right about this? Because we have all the evidence after several years of investigations and committee reports and Justice Departments and Congresses and all of the places that have investigated this. We have all of their findings. And we're about to find out because I'm Kevin Lankus, and we're going to look at why Obama just can't find a way to stop taking the blame for everything. I wonder if it has anything to do with... No, that can't be right. That can't be right. That's silly. That's ridiculous. In 2017, Trump let rip a bunch of tweets about how he was under surveillance by Obama. He repeatedly suggested that Obama was trying to steal the election and rig the votes, and to that end, he was wiretapping Trump and his team, specifically at Trump Tower. That same year, then FBI Director James Comey was questioned by the House Intelligence Committee and did confirm that Trump and his associates were being investigated, just in relation to their role in the Russian meddling campaign that was enacted to influence the election. And this event is not up for debate anymore. Russian state agents attempted to affect the outcome of the 2016 election. We have multiple hefty volumes full of details that were written by different investigators and bipartisan committees with all the proof that anyone could ever need. In fact, a CIA report came out at the end of last month that found that the conclusions of their 2017 intelligence report were still correct. A Trump administration CIA found that this happened not once, but twice. The second time coming years later after an extensive review of their previous findings. We know that Russian actors meddled with information, destabilizing the public's inability to know truth from falsehood. Trump and team are making the claim that Obama-era intelligence accused Russia of actually hacking into systems and changing votes and results, but that was never part of the initial evidence for Russian meddling. Okay, so let's get into the wiretapping and what really happened, because the over-the-top language is complete misinformation, and while it seems like it could be taken right out of the playbook of Vladimir Putin. So let's clear some things up. And please don't forget to like and subscribe while we do, so that we can keep building a community of evidence seekers and people who just want to know the truth about what's really happening in the world. People who don't want to guess at things or fall into propaganda or conspiracy theories, who don't want to believe, but who just want to know. The reason this whole wiretap thing got started in the first place is actually really bad news for Trump, but not a lot of people are picking up on that because, like any good grifter, he has the uncanny ability of just turning everything around that should be bad news for him and pinning it on whoever he wants. I think the most infuriating example of this that I've known from all of his existence so far is the term fake news. Because a lot of us in the media were using this term to try to make the public more aware of all these outlets that were sprouting up to publish absolute nonsense in order to make a killing in ad revenue. None of what they were publishing was true, and we have direct evidence that some of it was Russian state-sponsored and also from some small cells like the one out of Macedonia. But Trump co-opted the term to refer to any reporting about him specifically that he didn't like. And we just let him do that. And that has caused immeasurable damage to information literacy in the United States. I'm terrified, honestly, that we may never recover from this. We can no longer, with any clarity, call out absolute bullshit when it springs up, and that was always the point of this. In the beginning of the wiretap conspiracy theory, the claim was that President Obama was surveilling Trump Tower. Trump specifically used the word wiretap, but when no wiretaps were found, he said that he was using that word in a more general sense, and that he just meant that he was being surveilled by Obama's intelligence agencies. Trump has a long-standing tradition of making up words and their definitions, of claiming he's the first person to come up with certain words or phrases, like when he said he invented the term prime the pump, or when he thought he popularized the word groceries. He said it means a sort of a bag with stuff in it, as if we didn't know that. So he tried to change the definition of wiretap, which is also a very specific word with a pretty specific meaning. But either way, it doesn't matter because the story exploded and everyone was talking about it, and by everyone I mean Fox News. They said at one point that Obama brought in a secret British spy unit to physically install the wiretaps in Trump Tower. Unfortunately, none of that was true, and you don't have to take my word for it, because one big important flaw with the accusation is that in the pre-Trump era, presidents didn't have the authority to simply order the Justice Department to investigate someone. The Justice Department was an independent entity. It was designed that way to keep political meddling out of the mechanisms of achieving real justice. It's only now that we're in a place where they're taking the marching orders from Trump and his handpicked goons. Another problem with these claims is that we've already investigated them. We already know whether or not they're true. When Comey testified that Trump was being investigated for his extensive and very public ties to Russian state intelligence, Comey also reported that he'd seen no evidence within the intelligence community that Obama was surveilling Trump. There were no wiretaps to be found, and definitely no weirdo Trump definitions of wiretaps. And Comey wasn't the only one who said it didn't happen. The director of national intelligence at the time, James Clapper, also said that there was no evidence of this at all. And I don't know, you could argue maybe that, you think somehow that these are Obama thugs who are just doing his bidding, I guess. But then you'd be forgetting the entire history of who they are, including the fact that Comey came out publicly right before the 2016 election to announce an investigation into Hillary Clinton and potentially swaying the whole thing for Trump. He did this even though he knew that Trump was also under investigation, but he didn't say anything about that. The Senate Intelligence Committee chairman at the time, Richard Burr, a Republican from North Carolina, said there was no evidence of wiretapping. This other guy you might remember from his Jim Bro profile pictures and his Ayn Rand fantasies called Paul Ryan, who was Speaker of the House at the time, and a very staunch neoconservative fellow, also said there was no evidence that Barack Obama wiretapped Trump Tower or surveilled Trump and his gang. The House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, who I'm not even going to talk much about because he's one of the most shameless Republican grifters in the pre-Trump era, he came out and said back then that there was no evidence. He said about Trump, quote, "Are you going to take the tweets literally? If so, clearly the president was wrong." The Senate Intelligence Committee released a joint statement at the time saying, quote, "Based on the information available to us, we see no indications that Trump Tower was the subject of surveillance by any element of the United States government, either before or after Election Day." Again, this was a bipartisan committee with a deeply Republican chairman. Then, after a Freedom of Information request and subsequent lawsuit launched by a watchdog group, a Department of Justice court filing from September 2017 was released stating that, quote, "Both the FBI and the NSD, the National Security Division, confirm that they have no records related to wiretaps as described by the tweets." But what did actually play out was truly damning for Donald Trump. The administration was surveilling Russian intelligence operatives. And why would Trump be all upset about this Obama wiretapping thing? Because Trump and his associates were showing up on these intercepted Russian communications. People of interest to the Justice Department at the time were Paul Manafort and Mike Flynn. And you may remember the extensive criminal trials and the plea bargains and prison time that happened for those guys. Manafort was found to be directly involved with Russian election interference, and the Justice Department was listening to that, sure. So it's more like the Obama-era intelligence community was listening to the fresh new beats of the Soviet spy network on the radio, and this big dumb orange idiot just calls into the show. "Oh yes, Comrade Krasnov, we will destabilize American media for you with the Tweety Birds and the Alex Jones conspiracy nutcase man. Yes, this thing we will do." The biggest problem with American politics right now is that Americans have short memories. The second biggest problem with American politics is that even when Americans remember something, they sometimes don't believe it. The claim that President Barack Obama somehow did anything illegal or untoward or even unethical in relation to Trump's election campaign is patently false. Obama was a man so obsessed with appearances and gravitas that he sabotaged his own policy positions now and again in order to cater to optics. It's completely ridiculous to think that a man who was terrified of looking a certain way so as to confirm the fears of a lot of truly horrible racist Americans would do something so completely in opposition to that motivation. But we don't have to sit here and analyze the character and drive of Barack Obama because we have the evidence. We have the word of several people who are working with Trump right now, or who have enabled him over the years and raised him up into power. And we have multiple gigantic reports from the intelligence community and independent investigators over the years. It's time to stop pushing complete nonsense just because you'd like it to be true. Looking at all the evidence in these cases is important, especially when you're watching and reading something that drives you into a rage or emotional spiral or just intense reactivity. You need to take a breath and calm down and then look at the real concrete data. Trump says Obama is guilty and this was treason, and he says this was every word you can think of. But really, only one prominent word comes to mind when I think about this whole thing and the overwhelming evidence that Trump is just making it all up like he makes up everything else. And that word is bullshit. Also weaponized political terrorism, but that's more of a phrase. Let's do some good about politicians who want to sway public opinion with baseless claims and who are hiding behind distractions because their best friend was a pedophile with his own island that the Tangerine Tyrant has visited several times. Let's not let people get away with things, just in general. I'll see you in the next one.